thank Forster Nicala for having invited me here part of this exercise. And I bring greetings from the Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Associations of Barbados. Let me say this discussion here is timely because it follows on the agenda of the National Level Conference in Geneva, where social dialogue was one of the main topics which we discussed. I see what we're doing here today really as bring together the whole question of decent work and social dialogue to form the agenda of sustainable development when put forward by the ILO. And we have to see the importance of that in the context of what it is that we are trying to achieve within the trade union movement and, of course, within the global movement. I, however, believe that this discussion is very important for both the English-speaking Caribbean and Latin America to be engaged in this discussion because as a region, we need to have some common standards and approaches to issues that impact us within our work environment. I would wish to say to you that when we look at decent work, we should put it into a context. And that context, I want to suggest to you, has to look both at our constitutional rights and it has to also look at the question of human rights as we so much admonish. And at that point, we want to say democracy has to be a prevailing factor in when we address these particular issues. In our democratic society, we respect the rights of people. We respect the human rights and workplace rights. And if we do that, there are some things that we would want to ensure that we continue to uphold. To begin with, the right to strike. Workers must maintain their right to strike. That is being part of the decent work agenda. But you know what? We have to have the discussion where the unions are involved with the government at the national level and the employers, where we can look at what it is that we are trying to achieve in our national development and therefore set the standards by which we live and by which we want to achieve a model, a measure of sustained development for our countries by embracing people at the forefront of what we do. Now, when we look at what has happened over time with the advent of globalization, we have seen a change in the whole character of the global environment. We see employers who now impose their standards on people because we are here working in one territory or one part of the world and the headquarters of that institution is elsewhere. But they're imposing their standards when in truth and in fact they are violating the rights of the worker within his or her domain. So we have to address how globalization as an element has impacted on the whole question of decent work. And as we speak of that, we want to say to ourselves, what are we doing in our own jurisdictions to ensure that this does not impact in a significant way? Are we looking at our labor legislation? How are we addressing those pieces of legislation that we should look to amend or to establish as some things that we can uphold to the world? Take the context of Barbados. We have a social partnership that has been going since 1991. And in that social partnership, we attempted to address the workers' concerns, the employers' concerns, government as an employer, their concerns as well. But we do it for the national good. So what we have put in place to take this occupational safety and health at work act, we look at to the employer's interest, because the employer is to be held responsible, because he has to provide a safe place of work, and the law holds him accountable. The employee is not to be disadvantaged. There's a section of the law which tells an employee that they can refuse dangerous work, but there are conditions to that. You must first inform your union, the chief labor officer, so the procedural steps that you should take. We just don't walk off the job, but you can say this work is dangerous and I'm not going to do it as long as it's a threat to my life and limb. So this improves the quality of the work culture, the work environment for the safety and protection of the worker. We have put in place an employment rights bill. And in that bill, you will look to ensure that the worker cannot be dismissed at will. No employer can walk in today and say you're out tomorrow or out this afternoon. He must give a reason. It must be written there. He must give notice, a notice period. At least I think it starts at a minimum of 2 weeks notice that has to be given. And it goes up to the line. So therefore, we are ensuring that that culture of the work environment, there are some safety features that one wants to say, and to respect the dignity and the right of the individual within the workplace. So it's all about how are we approaching the question of decent work and the engagement of true social dialogue. That mechanism is one that is paramount, because if we have to enforce Convention 87 and 98, we want to ensure that those are upheld, that workers can in fact have the right to associate. Workers have the freedom under the law. Workers can engage through their trade unions, collective bargaining, and can be able to ensure that the best interest is secured. Then it's important that we address those issues in a dynamic way through the engagement of the workers and their representatives, through the whole empowerment of the worker. So when we are talking about decent work, it is on the one hand those conditions that we want to see improved. Of course, how do we get to a minimum wage that ensures that the people live above the poverty line? The social partnership is a mechanism for that, because you can sit down, you can look at your national development plan, both your short-term and strategic plans, you know what the country's capacity is, and you attempt to find a medium to address the shortcomings that present themselves. So it's all about the improvement in our country. And if I'm rather, Madam Chair, let me say to you that some of the things that we also need to address in the whole question of decent work, I mean, for granted, we have a culture developing where you're having many of those foreign companies coming into our region, and the whole question of trade union recognition is being put on the back burner. It's on the track. They don't want to recognize the union, so therefore the workers don't have the right to representation. And these are challenges that we have to recognize if we can improve and ensure that our countries and our people's interests and welfare are protected. We must address those immediate things and then ensure that we then have pathways to development. Thank you very much.
Em seguida, programas de transferência de renda, ele necessita de políticas públicas e até, se a gente pensar internacionalmente, existe, por exemplo, créditos de carbono. De repente, poderia-se ter uma ideia de criar créditos para o trabalho decente. As empresas serem recompensadas como elas são por não poluir, por elas serem responsáveis pela qualidade de trabalho e por o trabalho digno do seu trabalhador. Então, eu acho que é essa a nossa luta, e essa luta é internacional, e nós temos que estar juntos, senão a gente não ganha. Muito obrigada.
Obrigada.